Hello and welcome to the ActualTech Media Summit. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today, but before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you all. Now let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console, and we're going to start with the questions window. If you haven't already said hi, there is a whole giant, awesome community of people out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the ActualTech Media community. Also keep in mind, if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is probably going to fix just about anything, but if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's summit, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentation. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up, there are going to be lots of cool aha brain light up moments on the summit today. And if you want to share those with your community, we love that. We've made it nice and easy. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's summit will automatically be added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go and explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout the summit today. Now, I will tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be in attendance during the live webinar in order to qualify to win, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the summit today. Now, all of our winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to ActualTech Media, and all winners must meet the ActualTech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click on the Handouts tab, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all of your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much, we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's summit, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. The expert speakers and teams will be reviewing all the questions asked after the webinar, which means even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. And if you are a lucky winner here today and you'd like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have all of you here live with us at the summit today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with ActualTech Media on Twitter, LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. And if you're looking for more awesome resources and content right after we wrap the summit today, make sure you subscribe to the ActualTech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the ActualTech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in that Handouts tab, and you will be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar as well. Both you and your coworker could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend, because it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link back in that Handouts tab and fill out the application. The ActualTech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys, test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, chat with great people, and learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply or send the link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my all-time favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need all in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. Okay, I have one more exciting resource that I have to tell you all about today. That is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. This is going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and again, completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited and ready to dive in, so let's get going.
All right, and I'll echo Jess in saying hello and welcome to ActualTech Media's virtual summit. Today's topic is supercharging IT tools, products, and services for taking IT to the next level. I want to start by saying a big thank you for joining us. On the virtual summit today, we've got some of the most innovative leading companies in the industry. You're going to be hearing from experts at Rubrik, Zerto, Okta, Tray, and Commvault. What a lineup. So that's a lot of different sessions full of innovative solutions, hot trends, and creative strategies all in one place. So settle in and get ready to find out some new stuff. So for those of you I haven't met yet, my name is Scott Becker with ActualTech Media. I'm the one there on the right. And I'm excited to be your moderator for this incredible virtual summit today. We'll also be joined by Jess Steinbach in another one of the sessions. And Keith Keith Ward is in the background, just helping out. Now, as always, it's not just awesome content we're giving away. We have fantastic prizes today too. So let me walk you through our incredible lineup of prizes today. We're going to be giving away 3 Apple HomePods, 3 Bose portable speakers, and this one I'm really excited about, 2 Lego Millennium Falcon sets. So you're going to have an opportunity to win all of those. And then additionally, there's $300 Amazon gift cards that we'll be giving away every 30 minutes during the event. Now, as a reminder, as Jess, I think, mentioned, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prizes. And all the winners must meet the ActualTech Media prize terms and conditions. So if you're not sure what those are, you can find the full details in the handouts tab. Again, just click into the handouts section of your audience console and scroll down to the bottom and you'll find it there. All right, so we've covered a lot of really important things already. Let's start getting into the core, the meat of this event with our keynote session. So our theme today is supercharging IT. We're going to start with a data expert to talk about supercharging data, and then we'll get to other aspects of supercharging IT throughout the day. So Philip Russum is an independent industry analyst. Though he's independent today, Philip has worked at leading IT analyst firms, including Gartner, TDWI, and Forrester. And for decades, Philip's coverage area as an analyst is focused on data management and analytics, plus how the two must work together to help organizations modernize, transform, and indeed supercharge. So I'm going to bring Philip on, and we're going to chat for a few minutes about supercharging data. Well, welcome, Philip. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, good to see you, Scott.
So, given your expertise in data and analytics, how do you see user organizations supercharging IT by using data management and analytics tools and techniques?
Well, in the context of data and analytics, supercharging can mean a variety of things, but most of these things involve making certain IT-based solutions bigger, faster, and more impactful for the transformation or the modernization of the business. For example, a lot of enterprise applications are generating unprecedented volumes of data, from the usual ERP, CRM, plus a lot of applications that are very big today, like call center and logistics is very big. So, and these applications automate business processes for everything pretty much today. So we're getting a lot more data to work with from the operational side. And so today's data management systems are under pressure to capture this deluge of data for the usual purposes of process automation, but also to repurpose the data for value-adding processes in business monitoring and analytics. And, it's not just the data volumes that are increasing, the number of people that demand access to this treasure trove of data, Well, that's increasing too. For example, self-service access to large volumes of data is a common demand from business users today. And their idea of supercharging, working with data autonomously, so that they are not slowed down by waiting for assistance from a data team or an IT organization. So that's their idea of supercharging. However, for many organizations, the most transformative impact of supercharging IT for data purposes really comes from adopting new forms of advanced analytics. And at the top of that list has to be artificial intelligence. And as we all know, that's an approach to analytics that's usually driven by machine learning at the data level. And so, artificial intelligence and machine learning can reveal patterns in data that are simply not possible with older forms of analytics, like, say, statistical analysis or online analytic processing, sometimes called OLAP. And so, the patterns that are revealed from artificial intelligence and machine learning can provide new insights into older business entities, like the usual customers, products, and financials, but also into new business entities and processes that are have really risen to the forefront recently, especially logistics and security.
So analytics applications are good examples of accelerating IT, that you talked about there. But how do these organizations capture and manage those vast amounts of data that analytics requires?
Right. Supercharging today's big data demands a rethinking of data storage and database management systems. Plus, you have to rethink data modeling and data architecture designs for these. For example, the data warehouse is still with us because it is a tried and true approach to capturing and modeling multi terabyte data volumes for light forms of analytics like reporting, online analytic processing, and self service data practices. However, the data lake has arisen to complement the warehouse by handling petabyte scale volumes of raw and unstructured data. And this is typically for advanced forms of analytics like the artificial intelligence and machine learning that I mentioned earlier. Now, listen, note that data warehouses and data lakes are complementary. In other words, one's not replacing the other,
Hmm.
they actually work together. And between the two of them, you can handle any kind of data structure and data model, plus any analytic application type. And so you can also optimize each one for very specific data models and analytic applications, right? So for this reason, I do see IT organizations increasingly deploying the two of these side by side in a unified architecture called the data lakehouse.
Hmm. So, again, those are great examples of supercharged IT, but that mostly sounds like use cases that are rather latent, where it can take days or weeks to capture data and repurpose it for analytics. What about real time use cases?
Right. Well, another form of data and analytics supercharging is to increase the frequency of data creation, capture, and use. A lot of people say it's the speed of the data. Well, it's really we're increasing how frequently data is generated, how frequently we capture it, and how frequently we respond to it. And all of that is on the rise, and it's all pushing us closer and closer to real time. Real time in the sense of systems that respond in less than a second. That's still kind of problematic in data, but at least systems today are getting much closer to that. So responses within a few seconds, or getting down to 1 second, et cetera. So, for example, a good example of this would be that a lot of data sources today continuously push data into data streams and other real time interfaces. And there's some business value to reading each datum in a stream as it arrives, then reacting in real time or close to real time. For example, time sensitive events represented in the stream may point to an attempt at fraud, may point to a customer that's about to churn, could suggest an opportunity for upselling a customer. It could be a significant financial transaction, and therefore you have to treat your customer or client or your own financial resources differently after this big transaction. It can indicate low inventory, the delivery of a package, and lots of stuff. And so, reacting in real time can have some advantages to these things. Whether the reaction is an alert that's sent to a human, then it's up to the human to respond. or it's automatic action taken by an artificial intelligence algorithm. And of course, AI is on the increase, isn't it?
Hmm.
So you can see that in these examples, business processes and their impact are literally accelerating the business in time, as well as supercharging it in terms of potential business impact and transformation.
Gotcha. So, another area is clouds. They've taken over in recent years, and in many organizations, clouds and cloud-based systems have become the preferred computing platforms for IT. How are clouds supercharging data management and advanced analytics?
Right. Well, cloud storage has proved to be an ideal home for the data warehouses, data lakes, and lake houses that I mentioned earlier. And for these big data design patterns, a cloud can automatically provision massive resources for data ingestion and storage. Similarly, a cloud automatically provisions CPU and memory resources for processing data in its storage. And furthermore, most clouds support real time interfaces and very fast solid state drives. And these are ideal for capturing data streams and also retrieving stored data really fast. So, the point is cloud's massive scalability and its automation, the way it just automatically provisions resources and then reallocates them later. So, scalability and automation make supercharging data and analytics on cloud technically feasible. And it's now feasible from both a system performance viewpoint, but also a human maintenance viewpoint due to the automation of cloud.
And we've got time here for, I'd say, one more question. You've mentioned a lot of tool types and use cases for data and analytics. What about the teams that build and maintain these kinds of solutions? How are they supercharging their methods, their team structures, and their development processes?
Well, that's a good question because, ultimately somebody has to build and maintain this stuff, right? So, to that end, the whole data and analytics community has, in recent years, been rethinking data engineering to realign it with new business requirements, especially for AI, machine learning, and other analytics. Now, data engineering has evolved to a new method called data ops. And data ops is basically DevOps. And, DevOps was originally created to provide a more efficient methodology for applications development. So if we take the principles of DevOps and then tailor that to data management, then you get data ops, which is a development process that does have some quite some efficiencies, and it just addresses some modern requirements. So data ops helps data engineers when they're doing, say, ETL or other data integration. The data engineers may be creating data quality solutions, modeling data, et cetera. So data ops helps these data engineers to be faster, more productive, and to keep pace with the increasing number of data products and other database solutions that are demanded by increasingly supercharged businesses, right? So, in a related trend, we see vendor tools for data management that are increasingly including automation for data engineers, which usually involves smart algorithms based on artificial intelligence or machine learning. The smart automation in today's data management tools helps to speed up data engineering processes. So another way to think of data ops is that it strives to give an accelerated business short time to use for new or revised data products, and this is another manifestation of IT supercharging, but relative to data management and analytics.
Awesome. Well, Philip, it's always enlightening to hear from you. Thanks again for making some time for us today. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, and before we get into our first session, we do have a poll question for everybody. That's what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? So the options there are less than 6 months, up to a year, 1 to 2 years, or not sure. So I'll just leave that poll up there for a few moments to give everybody an opportunity to respond to it. We do really appreciate it. And, so Philip and I talked about supercharging data. We've got all kinds of other ways to supercharge IT coming up throughout the day. We're about to get started with our first session. So We've still got responses rolling in here. Looks like a lot of people are in the 6 to 12 month camp, with 12 to 24 months and 0 to 6 months pretty close behind, and a fair number of not sures as well. Okay, I'm going to close that poll down in 5 seconds. So throw your answer in there if you want to reply. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there's the buzzer. Okay. Well, thanks everybody who responded to that survey. We do really appreciate it. It's very helpful. So at this point, we are going to get into our first session of the day, and this one is from Rubrik. And speaking for Rubrik is Joshua Stenhouse, who's Field CTO for Cyber Resilience. Joshua, welcome.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Excellent. Well, take it away.
All right, let's go. So hopefully I'm going to share some interesting information with you all that is going to give you one really solid reason why you need to start looking at moving those timelines closer in the tooling in your environment. So my core focus is going to be around cyber resilience and recovery from ransomware, but also, periphery benefits of modernizing your approach to backup. And if you think about backup, traditionally not a very sexy topic at all. But if we look in the context of, okay, well, if I'm going to supercharge backup, why would I do that? Well, the answer is that every single organization in the world today has this fundamental question of, can we recover from a cyber attack? And specifically within a reasonable time frame where the business is going to be happy, the board, and we can also stand a chance of getting away with it not being in the national news. And a good, RTO objective is 24 hours. If you're down for more than 24 hours, that's not a blip. If you're back online within 24 hours, then you can get away with it. And so you have to ask yourself when you're looking at your tooling today, is that if you can't confidently answer yes to this, then you need to look at the tooling that you have in place. And when you start looking at that tooling, what I want you to realize is that everybody has multiple layers of defense. Everybody has firewalls and endpoint protection as a minimum, maybe even intrusion detection. And what you have to presume is that between zero-day vulnerabilities, humans, and unpatched systems, and even if you have VPNs with MFA, that an attacker can get in. And if they do, and all of your lines of defense fail, then as a business, you're going to go to your backup and disaster recovery solutions and say, hey, we need to recover from attack. Now, if those solutions are not designed for this use case, which likely they're not today unless you're already using Rubrik, then the unfortunate consequence is, one, they won't survive the attack. And even if you can make them survive the attack, they're not going to have the ability and the visibility to tell you what point in time to recover from and reduce that downtime and impact. And so this is where Rubrik comes in as a way of supercharging IT, is that we replace traditional backup and disaster recovery technologies with a solution that is purpose-built for cyber resilience. Yes, it checks the box day to day on backup and recovering all your workloads and data, irrespective of where they live. But the core reason why switch and why bring that change of your tooling forward is because if you can't answer yes to this question, then you need Rubrik, because we'll change it to a yes and give you the ability to prove it. But we can't do that if you don't have the data backed up. So supercharge number one of what we do for our customers is we consolidate multiple tools and interfaces into a centralized SaaS-based control plane. So the workloads that we address today for backing up and recovering are your traditional on-premises virtual machines, physical databases, etc. We also help customers protect large and structured data sources. And when I say large, I mean typically half a petabyte or above, where you typically can't back it up with traditional tools. Also, you might have increasing amounts of sensitive and critical data in O365. Microsoft doesn't back it up. You have to. And then furthermore, you're also going to have workloads in the cloud, either lift and shift or born in the cloud or plans to do so. So the first supercharge that we give our customers is a platform that we call the Rubrik Security Cloud, that is a SaaS-based control plane that gives you a single pane of glass, but most importantly, you are still controlling the data locality. So in your data center, we'll still put in physical appliances, so you have a local immutable backup and a local and the fastest recovery. But as soon as you start talking about anything multi-petabyte NAS or already in the cloud, then all the security cloud is going to do is stream that through to object storage and lock it off. But this gives you centralized control, and it doesn't matter whether it's a VM in a data center, an O365 mailbox, or an EC2 instance. Everything is 100% immutable and survivable, and you get global policy management. So a typical Rubrik customer, as a massive supercharge, is going to see a 90% admin overhead reduction. So you're not just saying, hey, we're modernizing backup. You're actually reducing the time you spend managing it by 90% because you apply a policy in the central console and it pushes to everywhere you're protecting. And the bigger the environment, the more benefit that's going to have. But the interesting thing is that if you go back a few years, everybody said and was concerned about the data in the cloud. And predominantly, other than leaky buckets, it's actually quite easy to protect data and make it immutable in cloud. But the biggest gap is the data in the data center. And what I have to tell you is that if you're looking and evaluating your tools today, and you're looking at, hey, if an attacker gets in our data center, how are we going to be able to then recover from that? I have some news for you. And the news is that if you're looking for a file-based encryption attack, you are looking in the wrong place. If you think an attacker is just going to encrypt your files, then all of your tools that you're building and products and services are going to now miss what is the most common attack, because it's actually now, and in the last 6 months, this is what we've seen via our ransomware response team, only 40% of attacks encrypt at the file level. So you think about, you've got the best endpoint protection in the world, or the best that you could afford. Well, that's running in a guest, in an operating system. That's looking for a file-based attack. That is now not the most common. What is the most common? It's actually a hypervisor-based attack. They go to the hypervisor and encrypt at the VM level. Why? Because the attacker knows that you're not running your endpoint protection in the hypervisor. Your tools aren't geared for this. And furthermore, it's also extremely fast to then encrypt an entire environment, because they'll just encrypt the virtual machines, and that then by proxy encrypts all of the files within them. So this is a huge bomb. You need to be thinking about this in terms of your tools and your services inside your data center, that everything is going to be bypassed. And then furthermore, everything running inside a virtual machine, you have to now presume is going to be taken out in an attack. So supercharge number 2 is you've got to put in some kind of data vault to ensure that you have a survivable bunker in a box, a survivable copy of your data that you can recover. Now at Rubrik, we do this by putting in dedicated physical appliances that are converging both the operating system, the backup, the dedupe storage, so it's all local to the data vault, and all of the security controls of a vault in a single solution. And you can't just put an appliance for storage, because if you do, okay, you can make the storage survivable, but you've got no visibility, no scanning, no ability to recover. So it's got to be the whole infrastructure of backup, recovery, and backup storage, soup to nuts, completely converged. And it has to be physically isolated. You've got to make sure that your ability to backup, recover, and store the data is survivable from a hypervisor-based attack. Therefore, nothing should be running in that hypervisor. If it's running in the hypervisor, it's going to get taken out. You've also got to make sure that you're not running Windows anywhere in your recovery stack. In 100% of attacks I've been a part of, Windows is taken out every single time. So if it's VM-based or Windows-based, it's gone. It's not survivable. Also got to make sure that whatever you're putting in supports all your major hardware vendors, and it scales out so that you can have a data vault that's a couple of terabytes all the way to a larger data vault with multiple physical servers as a single cluster that scales to petabytes. This is, of course, exactly what Rubrik does with the Rubrik Data Vault. We also make sure it's encrypted end-to-end by default, so in flight and at rest. And you've also got to make sure that the data is air-gapped. And when I say air-gapped, I simply mean that the backup storage, the operating system, and the shell are not accessible in the network. Yes, it's physically connected for the fastest recovery speed, but no, you cannot access the underlying operating system or data. And furthermore, even if you could, it's all natively immutable. So this to Rubrik has been since day one, since inception. And all this means is that, one, you can't access the underlying backup data. It's all encrypted remote procedure calls. There's no NFS or SMB. And furthermore, it's all 100% immutable. Cannot be edited or encrypted. We have our own proprietary file system that's append only. But that doesn't mean an attacker is not going to try and expire your backups. So we also protect the interface with mandatory MFA, local users so you're not reliant on a directory service, retention lock, so even an authenticated backup admin that gets through MFA still can't prematurely expire the backups. And then furthermore, NTP protection so they can't even drop the clock or change it to 2050 and have the backups expire anyway. The data vault uses a monotonic clock. It knows enough seconds have not passed for it to be 2050, won't expire the backups any differently. And next, you've got to make sure that all of your intelligence, your ability to scan inside the backups to determine what to recover and what is a clean recovery point, is built into your data vault. And that if that's a separate service, if it's running in a virtual machine, it's gone, it's not survivable, you're going to have no intelligence, no clue. So it's got to be built in and leverage all of the compute that you're putting in for your backup and recovery to give you the fastest recovery time and the fastest and lowest recovery point objective. And what I can tell you is that it's only when you put all of these security controls together with a Rubrik data vault and a data center that this is the best shot you're going to give yourself of making a major attack a recoverable event within hours versus days or weeks if you're not modernizing and supercharging your backup in your data center with a Rubrik data vault. But the next thing to be aware of is that that's just getting a secure copy of the data. So supercharge number 3 is, well then, how do I get the intelligence of knowing what to recover from what point in time in that data? So we're not at Rubrik just putting in a data vault, we're also layering in encryption detection. Now, a lot of backup vendors will say, hey, I'm doing anomaly detection, maybe even doing file level encryption detection, either in the backups or in the guest. The problem there, you're chasing ghosts. That's not the majority of attacks. So Rubrik will do file-based encryption detection. If any file is encrypted on the next backup, we'll pick it up. But for the most common attack, a VM level encryption attack, Rubrik is both surviving that attack and the only solution in the world today that is able to detect that VM level encryption attack, alert you, and we can plug this into your SIM and your SOAR to alert your security teams and give you the point-click-go ability to drive the recovery. This is not just anomalies. This is not just looking for file-based encryption. This is looking for the most common attack of VM-level encryption. But the next problem is the attacker says, I have your data and I'm going to release it. So how are you going to ascertain what was stolen? And the unfortunate truth is that it doesn't matter what tools or services you put in your environment. I can tell you in an attack, nothing can tell you what was stolen. Why? Because an attacker has an encrypted tunnel. They have a backdoor. They can siphon anything off. And the only thing you could really use to verify what they have is trust that if they give you a full download of it, that is everything they've got. So this clearly is not a good situation. So as part of Supercharge number 3, what Rubrik does is we build in sensitive data discovery into your backups. Now, this is built into this immutable backup platform. So first of all, this means that you've been attacked, everything's down, but you still have an immutable interface to log in to say, okay, we can still see what sensitive data was in that network. Because everything that was on that network, and especially everything that was encrypted, is now the minimum that you have to presume as exfiltrated. So Rubrik can tell you what was in that data by just scanning the backups. We have 60 different analyzers for all the common data types, so it knows what to look for a credit card, PII, etc. But you can also put your own regex and pattern analyzers on top. But the biggest value in terms of supercharging your IT that you're going to get from number 3 here is using this proactively. Because it's fair to say it's too late after the fact. Yes, it's still useful, but it's way more useful if you can mitigate and minimize the amount of data stolen in the first place. So the biggest value in supercharging our customers get is using this day to day to minimize the sensitive data on the network. Because, okay, the first scan of 1 billion files is going to take time. It'll probably take a week. But the next scan, because it's built into backup, knows, well, only 3% has changed here. I only have to scan the 3%. The next problem that you're going to have is, let's say the data was encrypted last night. Does that mean that now we can immediately recover to yesterday? Absolutely not. Because how do you know that you're not going to be reintroducing the attacker into that environment via the malware and remote access tools? So as part of Supercharge number 3, we also layer in built-in threat hunting. And what we're saying here is that built into this Rubrik data vault, we will scan through the backups in their offline state. And this is unique because everyone else will say, hey, I can scan, but what they're doing is a mount. And as soon as you mount and you scan every file, then you're talking days to weeks to try and find a recovery point, a la you're just not going to bother. With Rubrik, we don't mount the VM or the server to scan it. We scan it offline with our own proprietary scanner that scans thousands of backups in seconds. So we can tell you very quickly via our intelligence or feed in your own. So you bring in security incident response, feed in a YAR rule, list of hashes. We'll tell you this is a clean recovery point per server, and then quarantine the known bad. And that is absolutely game changing, and one supercharging IT that you probably didn't even think that you needed or were looking for, but I can guarantee is going to be the biggest difference in reducing the recovery time in event of a ransomware attack, because you can find a recovery point without having to bring a server online. And just think about, how long it'd take to recover your servers, load a tool, scan, and then rinse and repeat, versus just scan back in time and within minutes know my clean recovery point. Absolute game changer, and why you need to be supercharging IT with Rubrik and bringing that decision forward. But then the last piece of the puzzle is then understanding that, okay, let's say we found a clean recovery point. How do we now automate that? So we built in cyber recovery workflows to automate that recovery, drive the fastest recovery time, also auto select the last clean backup. So it goes to the most recent backup that doesn't contain the malware or the encrypted data. And most importantly, give you the ability to test and prove in advance your recovery time and prove that, yes, can we recover if you have these supercharged capabilities? Yes, you can recover, and yes, you can prove it. And you have the associated documentation and reporting to show that. But then the next problem is, okay, let's say I've got all of these tools. Well, now I need people to actually drive it in response to an attack. So supercharge number 4 is Rubrik just doesn't give you these tools and say, good luck. We actually then give you a team to help you drive it. So if your backup platform is the last line of defense of your business and your backup vendor does not have a ransomware response team, then you need to reevaluate your position, because you're going to have to use those backups to recover in the event of an attack. And you're going to need help doing that, considering that the majority of your team have probably never been through an attack and know how it even goes down. And what I can tell you is there's your life before an attack and there's your life after. Learning curve is off the charts. So Rubrik has a dedicated team for this function. This is the team that I work with in learning what the attackers are doing and then make sure we're building that into our products and services. This team have done over 150 major recoveries today, 97% of which never hit the news because they got them back online so fast. And they stay with you until they are no longer needed. And this for me is a significant value in itself in just being able to call this team. But don't get me wrong that this is not a replacement for having any incident response team on a retainer. This is actually acting as a bridge between your in-house backup team, your security team, and then any team that you have on incident response, because all three of these are now going to need to work together and leverage all of these tools and capabilities. And if they're not working together and leveraging the tools that Rubrik is bringing to bear, all I can tell you is that you've invested in a tool and yet you're not going to see the benefit, because they're going to go to traditional recovery methods of saying, hey, let's just recover the servers, load a tool and scan. So the part of this team is helping you get the biggest value from the tools that you're putting in place, because that's a challenge everybody has when you're looking at your IT stack and tools is, hey, I can buy it and implement it, but is anybody going to use it, or am I wasting my time? So this is your answer to that problem, is that even if you implement it and nobody looked at it again since, this team are going to help you get up to speed very quickly in leveraging it. And this supercharge capability is not a chargeable extra. It is built into part of being a Rubrik customer. Interactive support and maintenance, you get this. But everything I've spoken about so far is just standardizing and modernizing your backup on Rubrik and then giving you all the capabilities to respond to an attack. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could put in a new tool that also allowed you to move up the kill chain and move from being reactive to proactive. And that's my final supercharge, is that once you put in rubric, we don't just sit there waiting for the bad day to happen. We actually continually monitor your data. So we're doing a continuous proactive threat hunt of all of your data as it's backed up and continuously then being updated on each new backup. And we have a dedicated in-house team that are building a daily curated and updated threat intelligence feed. It scans the last 7 days of your backups, scanning thousands of backups in seconds, because we can index all of the hashes on the files. And anytime we find an alert, we're going to send this to your SIM and your SOC for alerting. And we have pre-built apps for the majority of the SIMs out there, but you can push it to anything via webhook. You can also bring your own intelligence feeds, but our focus from our intelligence is on the RATs, the remote access tools, the credential stealers, less on the malware. We will look for it, but that's still the end of the kill chain. But the core premise here is that you're standardizing on rubric to move from being reactive to proactive. And with that, don't back up, go forward. Back to you, Scott.
All right, excellent. I really like those 5 supercharges. That was nice. I'm going to put up a poll here just for everybody about additional information that you'd like about the rubric solution. And Josh, we've had a bunch of questions come in. Let's see. Rob is wondering, is the ransomware response team unlimited in nature, or is it pay by incident?
It's unlimited in nature. It's not pay by incident. Just by being a rubric customer for backup, you get access to this team.
Okay, super. Mark has a question. Can a bunker in a box handle live updates via mobile devices?
Not quite sure where that question's going via mobile devices. But in theory, yes, I guess, because the bunker in a box is connected to your Rubrik Security Cloud, and from the Rubrik Security Cloud, you can push updates to all your bunkers. So if you logged into your mobile device to do that, then yes. But bit of a strange question, that for me.
Okay. All right. And Mark, maybe you can follow up with a little more detail about what you're looking for there. Let's see. Another question here is, if I have endpoint protection, why do I need rubric?
And for the very simple reason that, hey, endpoint protection is great at stopping an attacker, but if it fails or has been bypassed, which will happen now in the majority of attacks that encrypt at the VM level, bypassing it, then you need a last line of defense that is both immutable, survivable, and able to drive the quickest recovery. So it's not an either or, it's both, but just know that it's going to be bypassed in the majority of attacks.
Okay. This next question I love. I love tabletop exercise questions. They're wondering, what's the most common mistake you see in recovery from ransomware tabletop exercises?
So 2 big mistakes. Number 1 is presuming that all these services and tools are going to be available. So straight away in your tabletop exercise, if anything is running in a virtual machine, you should not be allowed to access as part of the exercise. That is immediately going to blow the doors open wide on any recovery exercise. And then the next big mistake is just presuming that you can recover to yesterday. So 1, many of your tools are not going to be available. And 2, you definitely can't just recover to yesterday because you're just going to reintroduce the attacker. And when you figure out how long it takes you to make that determination, those 2 are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck in realizing just how bad this situation is going to be and making your tabletop exercise realistic.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, Joshua, we're about up on time, but I did want to ask if people want to learn more about Rubrik, what's the best way for them to go about it?
Super easy. Just go to rubric.com, and like most websites these days, a little chat bot will pop up, and you can also click the contact me and learn more.
All right. Well, Joshua Stenhouse, thank you so much for coming on and bringing us up to speed on Rubrik and giving us those 5 ways to supercharge your backup. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks all.
All right, and now we've come to the time in the summit where we do our first round of prize giveaways. And so the first $300 Amazon gift card, just in time for Amazon's, the October Prime Days, Mike Giassi from Massachusetts. So Mike Giassi, congratulations on your Amazon gift card. We're going to have one of these being given away every 30 minutes for the rest of the day. Okay, and we've come also to one of our grand prizes. So we're giving away 3 Apple HomePods, and I'm going to announce all 3 winners right now. So our first winner is Robert Renkin from Texas, and then Eric Vermalo from Pennsylvania, and Webster Alfonso from California. So Robert Renkin, Eric Vermalo, and Webster Alfonso, congratulations. You've won Apple HomePods. We will be in touch about how to claim your prize. Okay, and with that, we are ready for our next presentation in the Supercharging IT Summit. And this one is coming from Zerto, and presenting for Zerto is David Paquette, who's a product marketing manager. David, welcome to the summit.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Take it away.
All right. Well, it's really great to be here to present to everyone and be part of this this webcast. So I just want to start off by talking a little bit about what Zerto is and what we do. So Zerto, and this is going to, well, I guess let me get past this title slide. Sorry, but Zerto, and this is the only time during this presentation I'm going to read from the slide, but what we really do is help our customers protect, recover, and move data and applications for continuous availability across on-premises, hybrid, and multi-cloud environments. What does that really mean? I'm going to get into that, but we've been doing this since 2009. We've had a lot of success worldwide with over 2,000 partners, and I think it's actually more like over 10,000 customers now. And we're now a part of HPE, so we have a lot of force behind us with that HPE organization, and we are doing some exciting things at HPE, and I'll get into that as well as we go through. This is just a list of a few of our customers. The reason I'm putting this up there is that I want to demonstrate that we have customers across all different types of industry verticals, whether it be transportation or insurance, healthcare, education, retail. It really is across the board. And what all of these customers of Zerto have in common, and this pretty much applies to all organizations, is challenges with different types of disruptions and a need for 24/7 continuous availability of their critical applications. Every organization has, data and critical applications that are important to running their business. This is a fact of life in the modern data-driven world. And one of the biggest threats to that data-driven world right now is cyber threats, particularly ransomware. And we just heard Rubric talking a lot about ransomware protection. I'm going to get into that as well. But I really just want to set the foundation here for what Zerto does and why we are providing the solutions we're providing. And a lot of that has to do with the disruptions that these organizations and our customers are facing. 93% of organizations suffered a data-related disruption in the last 12 months. That's something where data loss is incurred and downtime has occurred. And one of the other biggest challenges to these organizations is the complexity of trying to integrate cloud computing into their environments. Now, this covers a wide range of topics, from organizations who are just now moving into cloud, organizations that have adopted cloud and have been working in cloud for a long time, or organizations that are born in the cloud. And I'll talk a little bit more about Zerto addresses all of those different use cases. But one of the key elements I wanted to bring up here is that of those 93% of organizations that have suffered data-related disruptions, probably over half of those, at least by the surveys from our customers, over half of those disruptions were initiated by cyber attacks. More specifically, well, a lot of those cyber attacks are ransomware attacks. And so to address that, Zerto has focused on 3 key areas: ransomware resilience, disaster recovery, and multi-cloud mobility. And all of these 3 core areas that Zerto is focusing on are built upon our platform of continuous data protection. So what is continuous data protection? Continuous data protection is a combination of multiple technologies, starting with near synchronous replication. Now, our near synchronous replication is a software-only solution. So it is completely hardware and storage agnostic. It can be used across any hardware platform, and it can be used seamlessly between on-premises and cloud environments. It is a hypervisor-based replication solution, but we also support native hypervisors as well, or native cloud hypervisors where, for example, EC2 within AWS or Azure VMs. So we really do give you the ability to replicate directly from on-premises into the cloud or between clouds. But the important thing here is that it is replicating block changes in real time, not like a scheduled backup solution, which may be doing backups every few hours or even every day. Zerto is always replicating those block level changes in real time. So there's no scheduling, there are no snapshots, there are no agents that need to be deployed. It's completely done without any impact to the production of your virtual machines running in your environment. It is handled on a completely different level and is going to allow you to get those recovery point objectives that you're looking for of seconds rather than minutes or hours. Now, that's just part of the continuous data protection. Another key part of it is our unique journaling. Now, if you are talking about backup solutions that are using snapshots, then you're probably going to see backups being done maybe every 24 hours, like a daily type backup, or if they're more aggressive, you're going to be seeing them, maybe every few hours. But with Zerto, again, because we're replicating in real time, we're able to create recovery checkpoints every few seconds, so that when a disaster hits, you're able to rewind and recover data from just a few seconds before that disaster. And that makes a huge difference in terms of the data loss, because if you're in a high data change situation, then 4 hours can represent a lot of data change that's going to be lost in a disruption. With Zerto, you don't have to worry about those high levels of data loss. You can recover the data to a very near point to the disaster. Now, this is all well and good, but what does this really mean in terms of being able to recover applications across your entire IT infrastructure? Well, we also take an application-centric approach. But before I tell you what that is exactly, I'm going to talk to you about how it looks in other solutions, particularly more backup focused solutions. And what those look like typically is a staggered backup schedule. So your backups may start at a specific time, but then the backups for all those individual virtual machines or even groups of virtual machines are going to be taken not at the same time, but in a staggered schedule, so that those backups are going to be maybe hours apart even. What that does is if you have an application that is spread across multiple virtual machines, then it is not going to give you the consistency you need to do a quick recovery. It's going to stretch out the recovery time because all those different virtual machines have to be brought online and they have to be reconciled back to a specific point in time that application can recover from. So it may also increase the amount of data loss that occurs because you have to go back to the oldest backup of the oldest, of the virtual machine that was backed up last within that staggered window. With Zerto, we take an application-centric approach, and we do that with what we call virtual protection groups. So you can logically combine together virtual machines. It doesn't matter where they happen to reside, whether on the same host or across all the different virtual hosts in your environment, or within the cloud, even across different availability zones. They can be grouped together within these virtual protection groups, and the virtual protection group will create a consistent checkpoint for all of the virtual machines within that group. So it's going to coordinate all of the replication streams and all the change blocks between all of those different virtual machines to give you a consistent recovery point that you can choose. And those recovery points are really going to be just seconds apart. So you can always try to recover to the most recent recovery point. If for whatever reason that's not possible because of some corruption or something else that may have occurred that caused the disruption, you can choose the recovery point which is closest to when that disruption happened and has the cleanest data that you need to recover from. And you can go back as far as you need to, or if you've gone back too far, you can then choose to recover to a more recent point. It gives you a lot of flexibility in the recovery point that you want to choose to recover your data from with the minimal amount of data loss possible. Now, those were the three sort of core things of the continuous data protection, but another key element of continuous data protection is the recovery process. Now, with the recovery process, we want to be able to, recover things as quickly as possible. And this is just sort of like a walkthrough demo here of selecting a virtual protection group and recovering it via failover. So failing it over to a remote site, or it could be a local site, just depending on where you have your replication set up. And what we're doing here is just selecting the virtual protection group, selecting the recovery point that we want to recover to, and then it's going to automatically recover all of those virtual machines within that virtual protection group. And it can do them in the order that you choose. So if you want to set them up to start in a particular order because of dependencies, you can set that up within the virtual protection group. So at the time that you need to recover those virtual protection groups, it's going to start them up in the order that you prescribed for it. And so that application is going to come back online with all of the components in the correct order. In this case, the demo is showing just one virtual protection group, but you can choose as many as you like. And those virtual protection groups can contain as many virtual machines as you like. They're really just there to logically allow you to group them together in whatever way works best for your organization, whether it's by application, by department, by site, etc. The intelligent automation that's built into Zerto is really what helps our customers deploy quickly, helps them to make sure that the virtual machines that they're adding into their organization are automatically protected, make sure that it can automatically scale out protection as needed. Particularly if we're running in the cloud, we can deploy multiple appliances, replication appliances, which do the heavy lifting of the data moving to scale out as needed. There's so much automation built in that just simply using some tags at the VM level or at the cloud native level will allow a virtual machine that's being created for the first time to automatically be protected within a virtual protection group of your choice or a new virtual protection group that you want to create via that automation. And it's completely extensible via APIs. So anything that you can do within the Zerto consoles or command line, you can do extensively through APIs and programmatically. So you can set up that automation to really do anything that is needed. And one of the other key aspects of our automation is our non-disruptive testing. So what this looks like is recovering virtual machines from a virtual protection group or individual virtual machines into an isolated test environment. And what this allows you to do is have no production impact whatsoever during the tests. So you can literally perform the test nearly any time you like, which is during the middle of the day, because production is not disruptive. So it allows you to perform those tests for any number of virtual machines as well. So if you want to target a specific application to try to recover that and make sure that application is going to be recoverable to whatever point in time that you want to choose, you can do that. It's all going to be within this isolated network environment. And when the test is complete, it's going to automatically clean up that environment that was created specifically for the test. And so there's really nothing going to be left behind other than some automated reports that are created to try to determine whether the test was successful or not. And it's going to leave that environment open for you to perform whatever tests you want before you decide to end the test and have it cleaned up automatically. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in using that environment for testing. And that environment can also be used in a failover, like in an actual disaster recovery scenario. where you want to test the checkpoint that you want to recover to make sure it is in fact the data that you want to recover, and it will be recovered successfully prior to recovering it back into production. And then I talked about the cloud challenges that our customers face, and with that, Zerto has a number of solutions, whether it's for SaaS-based applications, public clouds. As I mentioned, we support AWS and Azure natively, but also a number of other public clouds for VMware, and a wide variety of MSPs. I just have a few listed here, as well as private and hybrid cloud environments, particularly HP GreenLake. Now, within those cloud environments, we allow you to perform disaster recovery to the cloud from on-premises, or disaster recovery within the cloud. I'll talk a little bit about more on the next slide, but the other thing is the migration aspect of Zerto. All the technology that I mentioned, the continuous data protection, can be used to migrate workloads between sites, or from on-premises to the cloud, or between clouds, using all that technology I mentioned before. So it's really going to give you the ability to migrate with the least amount of downtime. So moving to the next slide, I want to talk about the cloud native and the protecting data within the cloud. So if you have virtual machines running in Azure or in AWS EC2, we can automatically replicate those virtual machines from one region to another. And what this really gives you is the ability to prevent or protect yourself against regional outages, but also against other types of threats, such as cyber attacks, which don't care about what platform you're running on. They can attack you as easily within the cloud as they can on premises. And really, a lot of the cloud platforms don't have a lot of defenses right now against those cyber attacks. If they have infiltrated your organization, compromised your users, they can get into your systems and affect those systems. And all of the great resilience that's built into the cloud platform is doing you no good at that point, because you're already infiltrated. But with Zerto, we give you the ability to be able to roll back to a previous point in time within another region to get you back up and running from a cyber attack. I'll talk a little more about how we do some of that. But one of the last things I wanted to talk about in terms of cloud was our GreenLake platform within HPE. So within GreenLake, we also, we have both a GreenLake for disaster recovery, which is powered by Zerto, and a GreenLake for backup and recovery, which is a more of a traditional backup and recovery solution. And what is important about this in particular is how these two solutions, both backup and recovery and disaster recovery, kind of give you the wide range of solutions that are needed for protecting all of your different workloads, whether they're your mission critical or your less critical, maybe business critical, or test and dev type applications within your organization. So the way we view it is that your disaster recovery, which is going to provide 5 to 15 second RPOs and recovery point objectives, is for your most critical applications. Then you have a backup solution which could be used for disaster recovery, but it's really going to be more focused on long-term retention for those workloads, for those non-critical workloads. And then within the middle there, you have operational recovery, and that's going to be non-disaster related events where someone has accidentally deleted some data that needs to be recovered, or some data may have become corrupted and needs to be recovered without affecting the entire system. So with Zerto, we have solutions, whether it's Zerto or core Zerto for VMs in cloud, or Zerto in cloud solutions, or HPE GreenLake for disaster recovery for those mission critical workloads, as well as solutions like Zerto Backup for SaaS and Zerto GreenLake for backup and recovery, for that long-term retention and backup, going back as far as, multiple years worth of retention for all of your compliance needs. Now, I've talked a little bit about ransomware. I'm going to get into that in a second, but I just wanted to kind of demonstrate here some of the organizations that we have who are really achieving these low RPOs in large implementations. So at scale across thousands of virtual machines, they're able to get RPOs of under 10 seconds across all of those different virtual machines. So it's not just something that we can do on a few virtual machines. It's something that we can do across an organization on mission critical or business critical workloads, as needed at whatever scale is needed within that organization. All right. So in talking about ransomware, I just need to summarize it up real quickly here. And I'm going to try to do that within the context of our Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. Now, this is just sort of hitting the highlights. It's isolated, air-gapped, immutable, and is built on a platform of zero trust. What does that all mean? I'm going to talk to it more in this diagram here. So on the left, you have your production workloads. In this case, it's showing an on-premises, well, it could be in the cloud as well, but a VMware environment with a vCenter, the Zerto components of the Zerto Virtual Manager and the Virtual Replication Appliance within that environment. And it's replicating to a replication target, which is your DR target. In this case, that replication target is built out of some specific hardware, HP ProLiant servers and HPE Alletra storage. And one of the reasons for using that specific hardware is so that we can build the vault appropriately. I'll talk about what that means here. But we are replicating all of the data in real time from that production environment to that replication target. Now, at the same physical site as the replication target, we have our vault. The vault is going to be built identically to that replication target. So it's going to have the same hardware components, the same storage components. And the vault is going to protect that data using storage-based replication from the HPE Alletra. So it's really giving you a separate layer of protection. Now, what makes this vault different than a lot of the other vaults that are out there on the market is it is completely isolated and air-gapped. The only connection to that vault is a dedicated fiber channel connection for the storage. And that connection is really being controlled from the vault itself. There are no open management ports on that vault to be connected to. A lot of the vaults out there are either in the cloud or connected to the cloud for management all the time. And so they're not really truly air-gapped like our vault is. We are really only using that dedicated fiber channel connection to replicate data into the vault, and that connection is being controlled from within the vault. It's only open during the time that we're replicating, and it's being controlled or being pulled. The replication is being pulled from the vault. So there is no management port available. In order to manage that vault in any way, you have to be physically located within the data center. Now, stepping back slightly from the vault, most of your cyber resilience incidents involving a ransomware attack might or can be handled simply by recovering from your replication target. So you have all your data replicated there within your recovery journal. In most cases, you'll probably be able to recover just from that. You don't need to go to the vault to recover. The vault is really there for a worst case scenario where everything has been compromised, including Zerto, including the replication target. Everything has been encrypted or deleted in some way, and you have to go back to the vault. The vault is completely safe from any outside attackers, and you can always recover from that vault. And that is one of the things that makes Zerto unique, is our ability to completely isolate that away from the cyber attackers. Now, one of the other things that makes Zerto unique is that we have real-time ransomware, encryption detection built into our replication stream. So that is going to try to detect any replication that is occurring on the virtual machines as it is happening at the block level. And we will alert you to that within seconds of detecting it, so that if there is an encryption anomaly occurring, then you can be notified of that within seconds, and then take appropriate action to determine whether that's something that is normal behavior, someone encrypting a database on purpose, or whether it could potentially be a ransomware attack. But that is going to be used in concert with other security tools within your environment. So I just wanted to leave you on the Cyber Resilience Vault as sort of the one of the latest things from Zerto, as well as the encryption detection. Those were both released in Zerto 10 earlier this year. Now I just kind of want to summarize some of the things that Zerto has done, which is, or the solutions we provide: mitigating disasters, neutralizing ransomware, providing that operational efficiency, with our replication and recoverability, and unlocking those multi-cloud environments. So here are a few ways that you can learn more about Zerto firsthand, from demos to labs, free trials, etc. With that, I'll kick it back.
Okay. Yeah, great overview there, David, of Zerto's differentiators in continuous data protection, orchestration, and automation, and multi-cloud. Rob has a question that ties some of those elements together. Rob's wondering, how does Zerto simplify recovery processes when backups are stored in multiple clouds and complex mixtures of private public networks?
Well, with Zerto, I'm not exactly sure where that question is going, but with Zerto, you can replicate your data into multiple different locations, whether it be on premises or cloud or multiple clouds. And as you need to recover, you can recover from any of those locations that you've replicated the data to. So I guess it's simplified in the sense that it gives you a lot of options for recovery, depending on the situation that you're in when you need to recover. It will most likely ensure that you have recoverable data at one of the locations that you've replicated to. And a lot of our customers do use a multiple replication target approach. They may be replicating both locally and remotely so that they can recover more quickly locally if possible, or they can recover remotely if needed in a disaster scenario. So Zerto makes it simple to be able to just quickly choose whatever replication target is available to recover to, and to be able to recover in the most efficient way based on your disaster recovery plan.
Okay. Yeah, super. I think you got the intent there of his question. And I'm going to throw up the poll question quickly, just about additional information you'd like about the Zerto solution. But David, what RPOs and RTOs were customers getting before they switched to Zerto?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I think typically a lot of our customers were, dealing with either hours at the minimum or days worth of data loss when they needed to recover. Because if they were doing those daily backups that a lot of customers have been doing for their workloads, not all of the backups that they would try to recover from would necessarily be a good backup every time. So they would be losing at least a day, in many cases multiple days of data before they switch to Zerto. And with Zerto, they get that down to seconds.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Probably time for one more question here. And David, I don't know if you've got time to hang around and
Sure.
answer any questions in chat afterward, but how long does it take to deploy Zerto?
Zerto can be deployed very quickly. Most of the components of Zerto can be deployed from a virtual machine template, whether it is on premises or within the cloud, like an AMI within AWS, for example. So those can be deployed within minutes, and then you can have everything set up and be protecting virtual machines, within minutes or hours, just depending on what your knowledge level is in setting that up. But we can certainly deploy all of the appliances, the virtual appliances needed for replication and protection very quickly, and get that set up logically, within a matter of hours at the most.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and for everybody who wants more information about Zerto, I'm going to put the slide back up here for a second, just in case anybody missed those links or the QR code. And also just remember, throughout the event, in the handout section, there's a PDF for Zerto that you can download. But David, really appreciate you coming on and bringing us up to speed on what you guys are doing at Zerto.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, and while I leave that slide up there, I'm going to go ahead and announce our next prize winner. So for this round, we've got a $300 Amazon gift card to give away. And the winner of that gift card is Amir Littrick from Missouri. Amir Littrick. So we will be in touch about getting you your card. Okay, moving on with the Supercharging IT Summit, we're going to a presentation from Okta, and we have Sean Hanrahan, a Senior Solutions Engineer. So I'm going to turn things over to Sean.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn, Protect Your Organization from Identity-Based Attacks. My name is Sean Hanrahan, and I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer here at Okta, working with some of our largest customers. My role involves helping customers understand our technology and how it can solve their identity problems. I also have a specific focus on security and serve as one of our subject matter experts on our team in that domain. Today's session will be pretty quick, but hopefully impactful. I'll be sharing the 5 most common identity-based attacks and how you can respond to them. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to add them to the Q&A at any time, and we'll get to those at the end. So with that, let's get started. We live in a new digital world that's rife with cyber attacks being targeted at users, employees, consumers, and partners. Unfortunately, recent news is full of user-targeted attacks through tactics including phishing, ransomware, credential stuffing, and more. Whether it's the use of stolen credentials, phishing, or simply an error, people continue to play a large part in incidents and breaches alike. This isn't limited to any particular segment or cohort. It's a scale issue for companies, as every individual, from employees to customers to partners, is a potential for a cyber attack. Part of the challenge of securing the human element of our organizations is that people tend to choose convenience over security and privacy. It's really just how we're wired. This has been shown in countless studies. Let's think of a concrete example. How many of you on the line reuse your passwords? I know I do, at least for less sensitive accounts than I have in the past. It's become nearly impossible for users to keep a unique password for the plethora of services they have online today. Passwords were invented 60 years ago by an MIT researcher who wanted to keep his files private on a shared system. They weren't ever really intended to be used by millions of people to access technology. As you've probably heard, passwords are strongest when they are completely random and not guessable, but we as humans are just not wired to remember random strings of numbers and letters. And we as humans are also programmed to choose the path of least resistance. This is why people reuse passwords all the time. To make matters worse, security policies that require a high degree of complexity and things like forced rotation tend to cause people to revert to patterns to select their next password. Think of passwords like winter 2023, Jan 2021 exclamation point. These passwords meet our policies, but they're easily guessable based on a pattern, and they're not really helping to secure our organizations. Problems with properly securing passwords are partially why our users have been unfairly deemed as the largest risk to our business, but it doesn't have to be this way. So today we're going to talk about the 5 most common identity attacks that we see against users to understand what they are, why they work, and how you can secure your organization from them. One commonality that we're going to see is that identity attacks all target a user, and if they're successful, result in someone else getting access to a system as that user. Once they have access, they can continue to attack and continue their attack, and steal information, further compromise a business, or do other damage. So with that, let's dive into our first. The first one we're going to look at today is called password spray. Password spray is a type of attack under the category of brute force, effectively trial and error guessing. Password spray specifically is where an attacker uses a list of common passwords to attempt to gain access to as many user accounts as they can within a system. User account lists might be known ahead of time or guessed based on other information. This technique works because there's a tendency to pick simple passwords or just to not change the default passwords for systems. Malicious actors can exploit this tendency and use bots to automate and scale the attack, making it much more efficient and covering much more ground than they can reasonably do manually. The end result, like we mentioned, is access to a user's account on a system. Due to the nature of this attack, anyone can be the target. The attacker is more or less trawling for a foothold in an organization's systems. The motivation can range from financial gain to access to sensitive materials, to lateral access to other systems in an organization once they're in the front door. And ultimately, the cost to an organization depends on the systems and the user accounts breached, but generally consists of the cost for remediation and incident response, increased operational costs during remediation, as an example, increased call center volume potentially, increased burden on legal and compliance teams, brand or reputational damage to the organization, or sensitive data leak, right? So moving forward, and one thing we'll see as we go through these attacks is that the costs, the targets, the motivations are very, very similar, because what happens as a result of the attack is very similar across them. So let's talk about the next type of attack, which is also in the brute force category, credential stuffing. Credential stuffing is like password spray in that attackers are attempting to log into lots of accounts using bots and automation to scale. But the key difference is that with credential stuffing, the attacker, instead of using simple word lists, is using compromised username and password pairs that are sourced from breaches in other services. And they're taking those pairs and stuffing them into the new service. So it's an unfortunate reality that we hear about new breaches very frequently, and each breach, or with each breach, a potential attacker's list grows. Credential stuffing exploits the user tendency that we discussed earlier to reuse passwords across services. Because of this, the target really can be anyone in the organization if they've reused their credentials from other services that they have accounts with. You can see here that credential stuffing makes up a large portion of all digital traffic, which is frankly a frightening statistic, showing just how common this attack pattern really is. Let's shift gears away from brute force to another category of attack, phishing. Phishing is a social engineering attack that's commonly used to steal user data like login credentials, credit cards, or other sensitive information. In an identity context, it usually results in compromised credentials, allowing attackers to subsequently gain access as that user to a corporate system or network. Ultimately, phishing is all about the attacker tricking the user into taking the bait, doing something harmful like clicking a malicious link. Phishing campaigns can take many different forms. They can be via email, SMS, which is also called smishing, or voice, which is also called vishing. Campaigns can broadly target everybody in an organization, or be specifically targeted to individuals within an organization, which is more commonly known as spear phishing. To get users to fall victim to the phish, attackers come up with any number of pretexts or calls to actions that typically play on a user's emotion to get them to take the bait. The more targeted the campaign, the more personal details the attacker can use to craft for that user to make the phish more believable. Regardless of the method, once a user falls victim to the phish and has their credentials stolen, the attacker can then gain access to corporate systems and access sensitive information as that user. Moving on, we're going to come to machine in the middle or man in the middle attacks. Broadly speaking, a machine in the middle occurs when an attacker manages to obtain a position between a targeted victim and the resource the victim intended to connect to. The attacker makes it appear that nothing's wrong and the victim has a private conversation, but the reality is this just isn't the case, and the attacker can see and even manipulate any traffic in that conversation. In an identity context, man in the middle is commonly initiated from a successful phish, leading a user to a login page or screen that the attacker controls. Credentials and information entered into this page are intercepted by the attacker and proxied to the real site. This not only allows the attacker to capture a user's login credentials, but also to bypass traditional multi-factor authentication by prompting the user for the code and replaying it to the real login screen. More sophisticated versions of this type of attack leave the user unaware they've been compromised and give the attacker an active session as that user. It's not always easy to tell at a glance that the page is fraudulent, and even the most savvy users can be fooled by this attack. This type of attack is on the rise and can impact really anybody in an organization. Like the other attacks that we've seen, the result is compromised access to systems and all of the potential costs that we discussed that can result from that. The final attack we'll talk about today is called MFA fatigue. MFA fatigue attacks take advantage of a weakness in an authentication method called push MFA that's gotten a lot of attention lately. In a normal case, this method of authentication will push a notification to a user's device and require them to accept it in order to pass the authentication check. This means the user can actually approve an authentication prompt for a login that they didn't start and they're not present for. This is the root of the issue with the push of MFA authentication method and why this type of attack succeeds. The attacker doesn't need to have the user's device, they just need to trick the user into accepting that prompt. Knowing this, a bad actor can exploit push MFA to repeatedly send notifications to an end user. The goal of this repeated flood of notifications is either to trick the user into accepting the prompt through fatigue, i.e. make this stop, right? Or by accident, accidentally hitting yes to that prompt. Either way, the result is the same. The bad actor gets authenticated as the user. In some cases, the attackers may even try to contact users out of band via another communication channel like WhatsApp or SMS, posing as IT to get them to approve the prompt under the guise of system maintenance or testing or something like that. So now that we've reviewed the top 5 identity attacks, let's talk about how we can combat them. What tools do we have at our disposal? What can we do to more properly secure our organizations against these? We'll look at this through the lens of protection against the attacks and detection and response to an attack in progress. Protection largely breaks down into 2 buckets: technical controls and user education. From a technical control standpoint, we want to address the weaknesses that are exploited by the various attacks that we spoke about. In general, this means improving password hygiene, moving towards more secure forms of authentication, and leveraging protections against automated attacks. First off, implementing single sign-on introduces centralized policy and visibility for our users' logins. This makes things easier for both users and IT. It reduces the attack surface for identity-based attacks to a single system as opposed to the plethora of business apps that you might have. Implementing password requirements and disallowing default passwords and requiring an immediate password change for new accounts are all controls that can help reduce brute force type attacks like password spray by encouraging stronger passwords and reducing the number of times an attacker can attempt to guess a password for an account. Using technologies like Okta's threat insights and CAPTCHA can stop automated attacks in their tracks by blocking bot-like and anomalous behavior intelligently based on attacks that we see without disrupting users. Deploying not just MFA, but phishing-resistant MFA can halt brute force, phishing, and man-in-the-middle attacks in their tracks. These technologies like WebAuthn, FIDO2, or Okta's own FastPass use strong cryptography and domain binding to ensure that users are in fact logging into the appropriate site. The technologies are built so that they can't actually be used successfully by an attacker on man-in-the-middle login pages or by a user on an attacker-controlled man-in-the-middle login page to authenticate a user, and they just won't work. Man-in-the-middle and MFA fatigue attacks are no longer possible when an organization uses these methods exclusively. Last but not least, education is critical to empowering our users to becoming a powerful line of defense against identity attacks. Critically warning against password reuse, encouraging good password hygiene like a long, unique passphrase that doesn't need to be rotated unless it's suspected to be compromised, and helping users identify not just how to spot something suspicious, but how to report it, are all critical tools to building a successful program. If users don't reuse passwords, credential stuffing attacks no longer work. With strong and unique passphrases, password spray becomes much more limited in its efficacy. So in sum, these controls can help to harden your organization to the identity attacks that we've talked about today. So we covered hardening against attacks. What can we do to detect an attack that's in progress and take action to stop it? Well, first and foremost, we can use contextual and adaptive policies based on risk. If we see things like impossible travel for a user, right, me logging in here and then across the country in the next minute, or a new device, or something looks off, we can flat out deny the authentication attempt, or we can require a stepped up or a stronger form of authentication from that user, possibly one that's phishing resistant. Policy like this allows you to ratchet up security when you need it, while not impacting user experience when you don't, and allows organizations to dynamically respond to anomalous conditions in real time. Sending notifications to users about unusual events and more critically taking action when a user reports suspicious activity allows you to turn your users into a powerful weapon against attackers. Integrating to a SIM and monitoring log activity for strange user behavior like denied push MFA attempts if the user hits no at that prompt, or successive login failures can all help uncover attacks in progress and may not hit policy thresholds, or cover attacks in progress that may not hit policy thresholds. In other words, you haven't quite hit the account lockout yet, but we can still flag it as fishy behavior. Finally, setting up automations to detect attacks like MFA fatigue or other suspicious activity and automatically respond by notifying your security team, resetting passwords, suspending accounts, or placing users into groups for triage is a powerful tool that can help stop identity attacks in their tracks. So wrapping up, let's take a holistic look at all the functionality that Okta specifically can provide to aid your organization in protecting against identity-based attacks. Universal Directory and single sign-on give you a holistic view of your users and centralized control over authentication policy and methods. Features like FastPass provide a seamless and secure and phishing-resistant form of authentication that protects against common ID attacks while giving users a really seamless and great experience. Threat Insights helps to protect your organization against that anomalous activity that we talked about and automated attacks, insulates your users from lockouts and other downstream effects in the process. Adaptive Policy allows risk to be incorporated into access decisions and provide a seamless experience where there's low risk and ratchet up security if something looks off. Workflows is an easy to use automation tool that provides a powerful way to automate detection and response to various different attacks. So in summary, Okta can help you elevate your security posture against identity-based threats. And identity isn't just the new perimeter, it's the foundation of your modern business in a world without perimeters. So as a call to action, there's a few things I want to call out. First and foremost, if you're a current Okta customer, you may or may not be aware, regardless of whether you own the Workflows product, you get 5 free. And there are several different things that may be worth exploring. One to call out here, actually 2 to call out here specifically. One is suspicious activity reporting. So when users report suspicious activity, take action, call out the systems like Slack or PagerDuty, suspend the account, notify your SOC. Another one that we're working on or we have available that can be distributed is response automatically to MFA fatigue attacks. So detecting when they occur and then taking some action based upon that threshold being passed. Next is enabling FastPass. So we talked about FastPass as a phishing-resistant authenticator with a great user experience. It's available to everybody that's on Okta Identity Engine. I strongly encourage you, if you're a customer, to take a look at FastPass and the user experience. Thirdly, turn on Threat Insights. This is a very simple action that you can do as an Okta customer to automatically block and log those automated attacks based upon what's being seen across Okta's customer base. And finally, check Health Insights. Health Insights, if you're not aware, is something in the Okta dashboard, administrative dashboard, that enables you to look very quickly at security items that may not meet best practices that you can quickly address. If you're not an Okta customer, the call to action here is to sign up for a free trial, which you can do so at the link here, which is okta.com/free-trial. Okay, well, that about wraps up the content portion of the Lunch and Learn. With that said, we're going to roll into the Q&A portion of the session. We have a question here. There are plans to allow push notifications from Okta Verify to be turned off to mitigate push fatigue attack vector. So you can configure Okta Verify, and we can follow up with you afterwards to disallow the push attempt. In Okta Identity Engine, there is a sliding scale of Okta Verify serves the purpose of a bunch of different authenticators. So it is possible to configure scenarios where push isn't active for all or a subset groups of users if you want to completely mitigate that attack. My recommendation is typically to look towards FastPass because it still uses Okta Verify. It provides a better experience and a much more secure experience at the end of the day. There's a question about a CPE certificate at the end. I don't know if we're providing CPEs as a part of this or if it qualifies. That's something I think we can follow up with you on. How to prevent constant attack account lockout. Even with Okta Log and enforce security based on threat level, it's still happening, and manually blocking IP is not efficient. Threat Insights is a good way to prevent scale attacks. So with Threat Insights specifically, when that's turned on and set to block, that circumvents account lockout because it happens pre-authentication. It doesn't count against user account lockouts. That might be, if you don't have it turned on today, a solution for that specifically. But that's something worth looking into, Threat Insights. So that, if you're unaware of where to turn it on, it's in the console. I believe it's under Security General is where you turn on Threat Insights. There was a question about enabling number-based authentication if you also need MFA for Radius. If you're referring to time-based one-time passcodes, when I hear number-based authentication, there's really two options. One is the typical time-based one-time passcodes, or TOTP, which OctaVerify supports, and I believe works with Radius integrations, if I'm not mistaken. That is part of the OctaVerify configuration, and if you have OctaVerify set up, you can leverage that as part of that authenticator. Alternately, you can provide your own authenticator if you don't want to use OctaVerify. We support Google Authenticator, we support Duo, and all sorts of other MFA type authenticators, or even custom OTP authenticators if you have a specific one you want to use. The second number-based that I think about is something called the number challenge, which is actually getting a lot of attention recently. And number challenge is kind of like push MFA, but instead of hitting yes, no, you select a number and you have to match the number that's shown on the authentication prompt screen. It's not completely phishing resistant at the end of the day. For Radius, I don't believe that level of interactivity is supported, if I'm not mistaken, because when you do a Radius auth, there is not that prompt screen in a browser that would show you the number. But that's something we can also follow up with you on. Would you encourage a passwordless environment, or do you think that security technology are not far along enough yet? That's a great question. I think for a lot of existing organizations, and this is my opinion, I think passwordless is difficult to get to if you have legacy systems, like, as an example, Active Directory on site. Active Directory does require a password in some way, shape, or form. I think you can go a long way towards getting towards passwordless today, and you can start to leverage stronger authenticators, and we can help move organizations as Okta towards this passwordless future. Personally, I believe that passwordless authenticators like FastPass, like you may have heard of passkeys, which are multi-device FIDO authenticators. I think those are the future of authentication. They provide a much better experience and a much more secure experience in general than passwords do. And I think the lagging factor for the longest time is that, like it or not, passwords are just much more convenient for users than things like push MFA or rotating codes, or really to date, until we've gotten to these very strong seamless authenticators like FastPass and passkeys, which ultimately we use are just looks like a biometric. There hasn't been a great option that's as easy to use or easier than passwords. And I think both of those, FastPass and passkeys, kind of pass that bar. So I think we're going to see a shift, but it's not going to be overnight. How would you best determine the difference between a password spray where a valid user is guessing too many times and actual credential stuffing? I'm assuming that the question is from a detection standpoint. So generally, my understanding is that a password spray is going to try several different username password combinations against specific user accounts, things like password 123, or if a system has a known default password, right? Credential stuffing is more targeted in that we're using known password pairs, password from breach credentials, right? So my email address is, let's say, breached in service.com's service, and I shared that password somewhere else. We're not going to see that threshold, or that lockout threshold, be breached as much in a credential stuffing attack, from what I understand, just because there's going to be fewer attempts per account. We're going to test with effectively high fidelity credentials, in that there's a good possibility that someone reused their credentials. We don't have to hammer that same user over and over again with different combinations. Now, there's always a possibility that several services that my account has been breached. I'd use different passwords across those, in which case you might start to hit like lockout thresholds. But I see that as a less frequent scenario. I haven't heard that as much from the customers that I've talked to. Usually the difference is password spray gets hit numerous times per user, where credential stuffing is more targeted. I hope that makes sense. It was mentioned we can build a workflow to alert us when an MFA fatigue attack is occurring. There are any plans to make this a built-in feature so we don't need. There are things that are working through product management, and we can follow up as well on that as well. I see that's an anonymous question, but yes, that's in the works. That's something product is looking at, not only from a workflow standpoint, like making that generally available as a template, but also from a product perspective, we're evaluating options. Is part of Okta implements enterprise PKI for other enterprise needs? We don't currently have a PKI. I don't know, and that's something we can follow up with product on to see if that's a planned direction for us. We integrate, or we can integrate with PKI systems to authenticate via certificate or smart card. We do have a limited purpose PKI when it comes to a feature device integration effectively to enterprise mobility management and device management vendors for part of establishing that a device is managed. But that is a limited purpose PKI. It's not to use that certificate for other things, right? It's really a limited purpose. I think that's all the open questions for now. I hope, right? I mean, we got all the questions answered. Thanks for dialing in. I hope you learned something from the session. Hope you found it valuable. So thanks again for joining. We hope to see you at future events. Take care.
Okay, we've got a poll question up just asking what additional information you'd like about the Okta solution. Just remember as well that there's a link in your handouts for more resources on Okta as well. And while we leave that poll question open, I do want to give away the next Amazon gift card for the day. And so this $300 Amazon gift card goes to Samuel Spalding from Washington, D.C. Samuel Spalding from Washington, D.C. So congratulations, Samuel. And then we've got another grand prize to give away as well. So we have Bose speakers, and we've got 3 prize winners for this grand prize. And those winners are Jason Powell from Tennessee, Nicole McClintock from Kansas, and Tony Ortale from Iowa. So that's Jason Powell from Tennessee, Nicole McClintock from Kansas, or I'm sorry, I should say McClintock from Kansas, and Tony Ortale from Iowa. So we will be in touch about getting your prizes. All right. Well, thanks to everybody who answered the poll. We do really appreciate those responses. And there's an image of the Bose portable speakers that's Jason, Nicole, and Tony just won. And now let's move on to our next presentation in the Supercharging IT Summit. So we've got Luke Smith, an automation engineer with Tray. So I'm going to turn things over to Luke.
So during this session, we're going to be covering the power of iPaaS in modern IT. So we're going to be taking a look at the current challenges with integrations, some of the limitations with existing tooling, a new modern approach to integrations with the Tray Universal Automation Cloud, some use cases, and then we'll jump into a demo so you can see the platform in action. As a quick introduction, I'm Luke Smith. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer here at Tray, so I work quite heavily with our customers on their integration and automation requirements and help them ensure that they have a more modern approach to their integration strategies. So really when we look at integrations currently, with the deployability of the cloud and business teams being able to deploy and implement apps, we've seen a real proliferation in the amount of apps that there are. Now, industry estimates have it around 25% more apps in the enterprise stack over the past 5 years, but I think that's quite conservative. At Tray, we've seen an average now of around 30 apps or databases per department, and that is a huge amount to integrate, and you really can't get there with developers and integration specialists who are in incredibly short supply. Simply, developer-heavy tools really aren't the solution. Integration IT requests are actually going up as well. In some organizations, we've seen a 10 times increase or growth in the amount of integration IT requests, because really behind every automation initiative that an organization have, there's integration work. But the integration software that we often use goes way back, like back in the Windows 2000 days, and it's not just designed for the agility that we need. You can't get there relying on a handful of experts and developer-centric UIs or scripts. So really there's 2 choices. Either the integration backlog increases or we have to find another way. And so when we look at where and how the integration demands are changing, we're in an environment where organizations are looking to consolidate with less separate tools and more unified capability. Traditionally, there was only a handful of integrations, but as we covered just a moment ago, there is an increase in that integration requirement, and that's a lot down to those hyper-automation initiatives. As well, when we look at the traditional way, a lot of it was developer only, but we're looking at more of moving to what we refer to as fusion teams. So you need all of your talent to work productively together to tackle integration and automation, not just stuck in silos. You also have and want to make sure that you have a good set of composability. So the idea is that before, a lot of it was quite rogue and disconnected because there was a rush to automate, but that created a lot of waste and duplication in effort and logic. And so composability means developers can pick up what business teams are building and vice versa, and builders can reuse and share to help form building blocks that they can rely on. We also want to make sure that there is standardized connectivity that can help insulate from changes like API changes, technology changes, but you want to have a way in which that's going to be able to be insulated from those changes. And then finally, we also want to make sure that everything is frictionless, right? You don't want to have a lot of legacy overhead. With automation further being adopted by the front lines, and we'll cover that in a moment, we don't have to worry about a legacy overhead like infrastructure management and apps that aren't enterprise grade or don't provide modern governance. They just simply won't cut it. And we want that growth to be frictionless on every dimension. And so when we look at the existing tooling, there are tools out there like citizen development tools that are quick to use, but don't necessarily have things like governance and observability, really difficult lifecycle management, quite a lack of reusability and role-based access control, and scalability can be a challenge as well. And ultimately, they become a dead end if you want to deploy at scale, say talking hundreds of integrations. As well, most iPaaS tools were designed for way back when, so some of them on 20-year-old code bases for use only by integration specialists. And the builder experience of those is often way too complicated for more of a democratized delivery and often aren't designed for collaborative development. You've also got API management tools, but they're obviously often too heavyweight for most integrations. And in some cases, they have it like a low-code UX on top, but that's at the expense of flexibility and limited business logic that can be done, which forces them back to code anyway. And then finally, you've got RPA tools, right? UX scripting. And now they seem attractive at first, but integrations and automation dependent on UX versus APIs just simply aren't robust. UIs change, and you'll have to change your scripts to accommodate that as well. And so this change requires a new way of thinking, right? We want to have fast, powerful automation, integration, and connectivity experiences. Whether you're a software engineer looking to add integrations to your customer experience app, or a technologist in finance looking to integrate order to cash, or someone in marketing looking to pull a single report from a marketing automation software, we want to be able to enable every team to reuse and collaborate. We also want to make sure that there's the universal capabilities to ensure that that can be done, right? Your organizations are drowning in separate tools for process automation and data integration to hand-grown integrations. We want to make sure that there's universal capabilities for every use case. And all of that is great, but if you can't scale, it is worthless. It's not just about speeds and feeds, it's all about elasticity, governance, security, and scaling with that stack change as well. And so this is where we come in, like with our Tray Universal Automation Cloud. And the idea here is that we have multiple experiences geared to different teams in the organization, but that still enable them to learn and develop on one platform. Underpinning that is generative AI that helps power every experience across the platform in a way that matters to them, as well as being able to cover multiple use cases in one platform, whether that's process automation, data integration, or connecting to any current and future stack to internal and external integrations. And then finally, having an enterprise core that provides everything that the company needs to scale as they are going out. So let's start with the experiences portion and break that down a little bit further. So at the top, you have the different personas that might typically use the tool. Whether you're a developer that's going to be using Tray Code for comprehensive developer APIs for application development, whether you're a technologist that's going to be using something called Tray Build, which is a flexible low-code builder to integrate and develop integrations quickly and visually, and then finally Tray Chat for managers who can execute on-the-fly integrations on demand using natural language no-code automation. The idea is that everyone can tap into the capabilities in the platform in a way that matters to them, code, low-code, or no-code. It is truly universal. And as well, with like other vendors, we are taking a service-based approach with our AI as well, called Merlin AI, which is to infuse AI into every experience the way that it makes sense the most. And so delving into more specifically Tray Build, this is the limitless low-code development portion where you've got the flexibility to incorporate any business logic that you need with our low-code builder. You've got no-code data helpers to help you with those data transformation pieces, and the very robust library of connectivity. We have over 600 connectors on our platform with universal connectors for connecting to other systems as well. We also want to make sure that, again, a lot of tools out there traditionally with a low-code interface have sacrificed or done low-code at the expense of flexibility, but our builder is industry-leading in terms of the amount of flexibility that it provides to power any process without having to rely on kind of code workarounds effectively. And the builder is designed to give you that capability while still providing it in a visual manner to make that integration velocity much faster. Delving more specifically into Tray code, obviously every app developer build these days has generally got some sort of integration requirement. It's connecting to dozens of services with and beyond the company, and developing API integrations is a rising share in app development. And Tray code can help massively minimize that. So with something like Connectivity API that leverages our Connect capability, you can have programmatic API access to our full library of connectors in just 3 API calls. Or you might want to use Authentication API to simplify authentication management, or perhaps developing an event-based integration with our Trigger API. And so for any developer whose app depends on integration, Tray code increases their velocity and reduces the overall maintenance with that as well. And then finally, no code, right? Engaging purely with chat, so no builder required. On-demand conversational automations for managers, sales, and customer service. And it's about putting the power to get tasks done that would otherwise require ad hoc integrations or ask into the hands of everyone. And we already saw that with how low code massively expanded who can automate and integrate, and this takes that a step further and addresses the amount of addressable users that can make use of the tool. And what's also really cool is that Merlin AI is powering our experiences today. So combining low-code development with natural language so that you can ask Merlin how and to help you build out a workflow for a particular integration, all the way to Tray Chat, which is that no-code natural language approach for frontline people who prefer to integrate into more of a chat capacity. It's infused into those different experiences so that all of those personas and users can make use of it in one single place. Then we've got the capabilities. So we've seen how we've got the flexibility to automate with our workflows, with code-grade logic. We've also got the ability to integrate, and that's things like data storage, data mappers, helpers, and data tables. But also being able to connect in many different ways as well, whether that's to apps or databases with our connector library, whether that's through universal connectors to connect to pretty much any REST, SOAP, or GraphQL API, and then also being able to extend on that connect capability with connector building functionality so you can build your own connectors to use on the platform. And then finally, what we refer to as Activate. So that's covering things like what we refer to as our config wizard and a fully rebrandable, customizable self-service activation experience. And so we make it simple for product and IT to roll out integrations that anyone can activate in a few clicks, and really those capabilities are universal. And then finally is our enterprise core, right? The core is everything companies need to grow with confidence. So that's workspaces, that's security, that's the governance and security piece, from role-based access control to simply a compliant platform that's SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. That's scalability, so things like zero provisioning and having more of a serverless elastic architecture. That's giving you flexibility whether you're on-prem or in the cloud. And there's also providing that composability, whether that's with solutions, templates and snippets so that you can reuse and make use of existing assets. And one of the key things there is that serverless architecture. So when we're enabling or scaling automation and integrations, traditionally you would have an infrastructure overhead and kind of a headache effectively, because you'll have to worry about how much infrastructure needs to be provisioned, and it just becomes a bit of a nightmare to try and predict. And Tray's a little different in that we have built up on a serverless architecture to spin up compute automatically on demand. So for example, if you have a seasonal demand spike, you don't have to worry about the infrastructure components that go with that. It's all going to be done for you. And that helps to free up your IT teams further. Also underpinning all of this is governance and observability at scale as well. And we'll see in the demo, we maintain full logs of all of our execution runs of your integration, so you can see the inputs and the outputs. You can stream them out to services like Datadog if you wanted to for data ingestion. It also includes things like sandbox and lifecycle management, versioning, analytics, so you can see how the platform's being used. And this is incredible because it's super important that when you've got a highly collaborative delivery model, you need to make sure that there's a solid governance and observability underpinning there as well. And so how does that translate into use cases? Well, there's a whole host of possibilities here. Here is just a few examples, whether you're in IT looking to help with employee onboarding or user provisioning. Perhaps you're looking at customer service and ticketing to improve that side. There's a whole host of areas in which integrations and automations can play a part there as well. And so that's the Tray Universal Automation Cloud. You can start to see how it is universal across every experience and use case from internal to external. And so really when it comes down to how this can help businesses, when we look at some of our kind of larger and existing customers, it's helping them improve their low-code velocity, right? The speed to innovation and delivery is critical for organizations in providing them with the velocity that they need. The adoption of low-code continues to grow, and so, for example, Cisco was looking to deploy an integration platform to unify their marketing stack, and they rolled out 30 production integrations in 4 weeks, which was significantly faster than their existing API management platform. It also helps deliver efficiency, so Airbnb have a 90% integration productivity boost. It also helps with collaborative development, so with large enterprises, collaboration is key. When multiple individuals and teams are building, NetApp was able to move to more of a fusion team-based delivery model for customer experience integrations. And they rolled out 90 flows across 60 apps with a team of business users and technologist builders across the business. And then finally, there's that elastic scalability. So IBM selected Tray using our elasticity to speed up their data integration process loading PostgreSQL data, speeding up their landing of that data by 90% without having to provision or worry about the infrastructure provisioning alongside that as well. Let's jump into a demo of the platform then. So we'll take a look at two of the experiences, Tray Build, which is the low-code builder, and then Tray Chat, which is that natural language interface as well. So for this use case, what I've done is I've created a very simple example which allows me to send a Slack / command with a user's email address to pull back to groups that exist within Okta. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So I have Slack up here and I've got /user group, and I can pop in an email address that I want to search for. That will go away, and that's going to search for all of the groups that user email address is a part of, and you can see it's pulled that back quite nicely. So this integration was built using our low-code builder, and we can see what that workflow looks like just here. So you can see it's very visual. It provides a nice breakdown of the kind of the flow and the structure of the workflow itself. And back to the Tray Build section of the presentation, you notice the three main sections that we covered there. So you've got the core connectors, which is kind of this structure that you're seeing with the Boolean conditions and the loops, the helper connectors, so you can start to see some of our data transformation and no-code helpers, and then the service connectors, of course, all of those third-party services that we're interested in connecting with. Now we have a whole host of triggers on the Tray platform, including things like webhook initiated workflows and schedules for more of an event-based architecture. But with this one, we've actually got an external app event as our trigger, in which this case is our Slack trigger, listening for /Slack commands. That will send the request to our Tray workflow, and we then augment that and add that on to send a request to Okta with our Okta connector. And so when we've got our connector built into the platform, you can see that I've got the operations over on the right-hand side built in, and I can see all of the ones that I'm able to use, including a raw request operation to hit any endpoints just here that I might not have built in. In this case, I want to grab the user, and you'll notice that Tray is showing me what I need to provide, which is a user ID. And so I can use our connector snake to actually drag and drop onto the Slack step and say, hey, point it to the text that you're getting through from Slack. Tray will also show me the output that it expects to get based on this operation, which is really handy because it gives me an idea of the data structure that we're dealing with. What I've also got then here is what we call per step error handling. So I've decided to manually branch out. So if this step happens, I want to branch out and go down the left side if an error occurs, or go down the default side if everything's okay. The reason why is that, one, I want to make sure that I have a robust workflow, and this error handling approach gives me a lot of flexibility about how I want to respond to errors. But two, Okta will actually return a 404 error if the user can't be found. So I've incorporated in here a Boolean conditional check to basically check to see what the response code coming back was from our call to Okta. And so if it's equal to 404, then you'll notice that I'm going to basically go down the true branch and send a Slack message to say that this user has not been found. It's a really nice way in which I can be able to start branching out my logic based on error conditions. However, if all's great, we can go down the default side and we can carry on with our kind of logic. So we know that the user exists in Okta. That's the first check that we've completed. Now, just the way the Okta API works, I can't just send it that user and say, hey, which groups are you a part of? Instead, I need to list the groups and then grab the memberships of those groups and see if my user that's been searched for is part of that. So the first part is again another call to Okta, so we can use the Okta connector list groups operation, and that will return back an array of results, i.e. an array of the groups. So that makes sense. We want to be able to loop through that, so I can put in I've got a loop step here that I've referenced the results array for, so I'm basically saying, hey, loop through each of these groups individually. Within that loop, we then use another call to Okta, basically saying list the group members, and that is another operation here. And you'll notice that Tray is asking for a group ID for this one, which we can easily obtain from the reference of the data coming through on the loop, i.e. the ID of the group. We then have our first data transformation piece. So I'm basically using our list helper and an operation called find object in list. I'm basically saying take the output of this call to grab the group members of the group that we're dealing with and see if there is a match for an object structure that's got the profile as the key and then the email address matching the email of the user that we're currently searching for. And that's going to return back one of two things. It's either going to return back null or no information, i.e. there was no match, or it will return back the match itself. So I can use this in another Boolean condition to basically say, hey, take the value out of this kind of helper connector. If it's not equal to null, then I'll go down the true branch. If not, I'll go down the false branch. False branch, of course, being that the user is not part of that group, so I can skip over that. But what I want to do is I want to build up basically an array of users that or groups that this user is a part of. So in this case, I'm going to use our data storage component, and I'm basically going to add on append to list. So I'm going to create an array for each group that we come across that the user is a member of, add it onto the end of this array. And that will loop through each of the groups in my Okta instance, checking to see the group membership and seeing this user is a part of that. I then grab that membership at the very end. So I'm basically saying grab the data storage value, which is great. So I can grab that at the very last point. And then I'm going to use that in my Slack message that I'm sending. Now I've done this in separate Slack messages. You could do this in one, but this just helps break it out a little bit more. So I'm going to send the first message to say this user belongs to this one. And you can see I'm starting to interpolate information here by referencing, for example, the email from Okta directly within this string that I'm sending. I'm then going to loop through my groups and then send an individual Slack message, again referencing information from elsewhere in my workflow with this really helpful connector snake. So it's a really nice visual building experience to build out this logic, and you can see and follow the flow of this really nicely. But what's really cool though, and one of the nice things, is that we maintain a full log of all of the integration runs as well. So was it successful? Was everything happy? Did it all go well? And that will also break down to each and every individual step as well. So I can see the first call to get all of the groups. I can break down each run of my loop and see which group it was looping through and what happened within there. And this is really powerful when we start hitting error conditions, because I can see exactly what went wrong and why it went wrong as well. So this full visibility means that I have full visibility of my integration and automation that I can use and be able to have that access to, so that I can make debugging easier and just have really good visibility. One of my also other favorite features is our alerting workflow. So again, we want to make sure that our integrations are robust, and we can have an entire tray workflow run when an error condition occurs. And you can see how flexible a workflow can be. What that means is that the world is your oyster in the workflow that you want to design for an error handling scenario as well. So some really nice features to help make that building experience both easy, as well as being able to have those robust governance controls and observability as well. We also do maintain a full audit log, so we can see exactly who made changes to the workflow as well as rollback. Let's finish up then by taking a quick look at that second experience, trade chat, which is the natural language automation. So switching over to the Merlin interface, you can see here that I have the ability to type the requests in. So let's say I want to ask Okta for some information on, or if I wanted to ask it to basically provide me with a table of information from Okta of the groups that exist within the Okta environment, and I want to format that into a table. So I'm going to provide it with that prompt there, and I'm basically asking it to take the information that will come back in the profile section and just use that as the table names. And you can see Merlin is going to go away and double check to see what it needs to do. So it knows it needs to grab all of the groups from Okta, and because we're using Okta, it's going to ask us for the authentication, so I can hit confirm there. It's also going to tell us the operation it's going to do, so list all groups on Okta. So same as what we did in the low-code builder there, but it's just making sure that we're happy with that and confirming it. And then it's going to go away and pull back that information for us. So you can see it's got the first table, and then the second table here is the nicely formatted one where we've got the name and the description of the groups that exist within my Okta environment. Now, of course, I could give it extra parameters if I wanted to format this in different ways or pull other information, but hopefully this gives you a good idea about how you can start using this third interface, Trade Chat, for that natural language automation. So to kind of bring things all back together, that's really kind of what we have here is the Tray Universal Automation Cloud. You know, it's multiple experiences geared to different teams in the organization, but still enable them to learn and develop on one platform. It's underpinning that with generative AI that helps to power every experience in a way that matters to them, and it provides multiple use cases in a single platform, whether that's from process automation to data integration to connecting to any future stack. And finally, it's providing that enterprise core that everything kind of the company needs to be able to scale as well. Thank you for the time, and any questions, do let us know.
Well, hey, Luke, and thank you so much for that presentation. That was such a cool demo. I love getting to see the inner workings like that, and I know our audience was really enjoying it as well because we have a lot of great questions coming in. Luke, are you ready to dive into some Q&A?
Absolutely, yeah, let's get started.
All right, perfect. I want to start with this one. What are some of the most common integrations that you see or application and database integrations? What do you got for us, Luke?
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's one of the interesting things with a tool like Tray is that there's so many use cases that we come across quite frequently. You obviously got some of the big applications out there, things like the Salesforce and the NetSuite. They obviously come up a lot in the integration requests that we do see. Also, when we look at how it could be used in some of the other departments, employee onboarding is another really big one. Obviously, there's lots of moving parts and lots of systems that typically come into place for those sorts of kind of use cases effectively. So we see a lot of both provisioning and deprovisioning as well. So kind of the opposite side as well. So when someone does leave the organization, how are we making sure that all the various systems are basically going to be able to remove that person there as well. And as well, it's another really important thing as well. It's a good question because we're not just talking about kind of SaaS applications as well. Obviously, everybody has kind of database connections. So when we look at the Tray platform from a connector standpoint as well, you'll see a lot of those common software applications out there, but as well as some things like those direct database connectors as well. So if you're dealing with data sitting in a SQL database, for example, or if you've got some sort of data lake or data warehouse, you'll find ways in which to and able to incorporate those into an integration need that you do have. And really, it's nice when I work with a lot of customers and we come across a ton of different things. And you can imagine with kind of over 600 connectors on our platform, there's an exponential amount of integration possibilities that there are available.
That's perfect because we did get a couple of questions about, what happens if you don't have a connector that we need. So it sounds like you got that covered. Hundreds.
Absolutely, exactly. So we have a very robust connector library. Now, of course, there might be niche systems out there, or a really common scenario we come across is obviously your own proprietary systems. So if you have an internal application or system that you developed, it is a very common scenario where you would want to be able to kind of bring that, of course, into an integration need. So what we have there is we do have universal connectors on the platform, and there's a couple of ways in which you can approach that. So if you're dealing with, for example, if it's a REST API, GraphQL, or even SOAP APIs as well, you'll find a universal connector available to connect to those systems. But equally as well, even some more generic connectors for other areas. Obviously, some use cases need to grab a file from an FTP server. So you'll find an FTP connector that we have in the platform to facilitate that. Or if you just need a JDBC connection to a database, for example, we have a connector dedicated for that as well. That's really cool when you are building in that workflow. What you'll also find as well is we have some features that make it possible for you to actually develop your own connectors on Tray as well. So we have a really nice visual interface called our connector builder that allows you to build out your own connectors that kind of look and feel just like our own library of connectors by our kind of connector team here at Tray, that enables you to kind of build your own connectors that you require. And one of the really nice things that you'll see coming very shortly as well is kind of the next iteration of that, which is called our connector CDK. So a development kit dedicated for you so that, again, you can extend on the connectors that are available on the platform in a way that you see fit, whether that's more of that visual interface or perhaps more of a kind of a code first approach to developing connectors that you can use on the platform.
These are some great answers. And Luke, I wish we could keep going with this conversation because there's still so many questions left in our queue. And I do want to remind everyone that we will make sure that you get some answers in follow-up, either on live chat today or via email. So keep those questions coming in. But Luke, I'm gonna sort of cheat and combine two questions in one. I wanted to ask you, what does somebody do if they want to get started with Tray.io? But I also am going to sneak in this other audience question, wondering about how they can try the product out. So can you give us answers to both of those in one go?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we can, if in terms of trying out the product, if you head to our website, there is a free trial that you're able to sign up for, and that will give you access to the platform, so you can sort of jump straight into the buildings and onto the platform itself. And what we also have is a really nice program called Tray Academy, where you can start to learn how to build on the platform. So that will take you through a nice gradual learning path of starting out with some of the basics into some of the more intermediate and advanced steps as well. So definitely worth checking that out if you're interested in exploring the platform further.
I love that. Short and sweet, Luke, but packing a punch. Thank you so much. This has been such an interesting conversation. I hope that we'll get to chat with you again soon, and we really appreciate your time here with us, Luke.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thanks, Luke, and thanks, Jess. So we're moving on to the poll question, just, what additional information you'd like about the Tray solution. So we'll leave that one up there for just a bit. Just let us know. It's the usual selection of choices: data sheet, technical white paper, customer case study, pricing details, personal demo. I'd like to try it myself, or already a customer. And of course, you can answer several of those, not just one. So whatever resources or meetings or whatever you're interested in, you can click on. So we'll leave that up there, and I'm going to go ahead and announce our next $300 Amazon gift card prize winner, and that is Omar Drici from Maryland. Omar Drici from Maryland. So congratulations to Omar. We'll be in touch about getting you your card. And I'll just leave this poll up here for a few more moments, and just give everybody a quick reminder that in addition to these resources that you're able to ask for from each presenting company, we also have a list of resources in the handout section that you can select throughout the day. Although we're coming up on our last presentation here, so if there were any resources that you wanted to grab out of the handouts, I'd highly recommend grabbing them now, because the event sort of ends quicker than you might expect. So there's PDFs and links in there from Rubrik and Zerto and Okta and Tray and Commvault. So grab those if you'd like. And we're going to go ahead and close this poll down and get into our last session of the day. So for this one, I'm going to welcome Caitlin Carollo from Commvault. She's an enterprise sales engineer, and I'm going to turn things over to Caitlin.
My name is Caitlin Carollo, and I'm a sales engineer at Metallic with Commvault. Today, we're going to be talking about recovery readiness in the modern IT environment and how security plays a role in your backup and recovery efforts of your IT environment. Now, Metallic and Commvault has focused on protecting our customers' data for the last 26 years. Now, over that period of time, we've seen a lot of change in the landscape of IT environments. Now, we see, the changes that have been in place during these different waves of technology, whether we think back to traditional database environments and physical servers, how that transitioned through to things like virtual environments, then changes like things like Kubernetes and container orchestration, along with the development of hybrid cloud adoption and SaaS applications. So we're seeing that SaaS application adoption is starting to outpace traditional applications, along with that managing these older platforms or legacy technology is a challenge when we have very varied components within our environments. So when we have, all these different components in a given environment, as well as cutting edge technologies, older technologies that maybe fewer people know how to manage, we're also seeing that increase in risk. There's a larger attack surface, there's way more points of entry for attackers, and there's a lot more expertise required to manage these environments as the complexity increases. Now, this is where Commvault, being an industry leader in backup and recovery, we really take an industry standard approach to ransomware protection and ransomware recovery. So the ransomware recovery framework that we follow is that of the NIST cybersecurity framework, so the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Now, this framework is critical across all components of your environment. So if you're looking at protecting production data, all of these concepts do apply in terms of protecting those environments. But we also specifically apply this framework to our backups, because we're also seeing that backup environments are becoming a big target for ransomware attacks. So we'll talk through this framework and how it applies to our environments as a whole, but especially to our data protection, so that you can be armed with information to understand how to ensure that even with backups in place, they are fully protected so that you're able to perform that recovery in the event of a cyber event. The first element of this framework is the identify phase. This is where you're going to get a lay of the land and see what risks might be out there in terms of the environment that you're analyzing. So in the case of our solutions with Metallic, which is a software as a service solution, we have what's called the Security IQ dashboard. And really what this is for is to provide you insights into what's actually happening within your environment and what areas could be exposed to risk. Now, when we look at security, we'll see things like the latest audit events, as well as that security posture score, which has recommendations, like I mentioned, for two-step authorization, encryption, auditing, and other components like that lockout duration that I've mentioned. Approach this phase with an open mind and try to think about all of the different ways that your environment could be at risk, with the understanding that this information is what's going to arm you with the ability to start protecting that environment. That leads us to the next phase, which would be the protect phase. This is really where you need to ensure that your data and your systems are protected from attacks. When we think about protecting backup data, usually we're thinking about immutable storage and air gap for those data copies so that they can't be modified or tampered with. But similarly, too, we need to also isolate our backup service so that in the event that our production environment is affected, that backup service will still be separate, isolated, and able to perform recoveries without having been negatively impacted by something like ransomware. This involves having multiple controls in place, such as zero trust access, multi-factor authentication to access that service, as well as strong levels of encryption, following things like FIPS 140-2 and having AES 256-bit encryption in place. Then on the other side of it, right, with the storage, so that would be for your service primarily, but we want to make sure that we apply the same controls to our storage itself. So it's good to have your backup environment that's running those operations decoupled from the storage itself. But we still need really strong security around that storage target, of course, because that's where your data is residing. So in the event of an attack, that's where you're going to go to get that data back. And so it's really important to have that air gap in place for your backup storage. Now, there's a couple ways that you can secure your cloud-based storage, some of which being putting in protections like that zero trust concept and multi-factor authentication for those tenants. You can also turn on object locks on that storage target to prevent any changes to the underlying storage once data has been written. Or in the case of a lot of our customers, we also saw a need for full separation between storage target and customer environment. And that's where we introduced our Metallic Recovery Reserve storage service, which provides that full air gap between production and storage by ensuring that customers don't actually have any underlying access to the Azure tenant where the storage resides. Now, this is protection against both ransomware from external bad actors, but also internal bad actors, people who might have access to the internal network or to credentials to Azure tenants, things like that. Having this offsite copy in the cloud while also completely decoupling the storage from the production environment is providing our customers with a really strong security solution for their backup data so that it's fully isolated, but still in that offsite location and available for quick recovery. The next stage here is going to be the detect stage. Now, this is where we're going to be looking for threats and identifying what those threats might be, suspicious activities that are outside of the norm. So this is where we're really looking for something that's going on before an event has actually occurred. Now, in the case of a backup environment, we can do that through anomaly detection as well as honeypot files on the file systems that we're protecting. So we can monitor for things like files being created, files being modified, files being deleted that's outside of the norm. But these tools, although extremely helpful to help detect something that is out of the ordinary and potentially a threat, they're also happening after the backup has been taken. So this would be happening in that stage where an attack maybe has already occurred or data has already been modified. So it's really important to be able to track these changes and then identify them so that a response can be implemented. But we may also want to look at detecting threats before an event has actually occurred. Now, cyber detection is, again, a little different from backups in that it's happening earlier in the life cycle of a ransomware attack. Now, where cyber detection comes into play is that space in between of protecting your production environment and having to recover from your backups. But when we think of cyber deception, this is where we're going to create fake assets and actually put them in production, as opposed to looking at them on the back end from the back end. Now, these fake assets are lightweight, they're easily configurable, and they look just like production assets. However, they hold no production value in your environment. This could be something like an Active Directory user that looks like an administrator, but it's not. It could be a virtual machine. Anything that has an IP address, a router, a switch within your on-prem network can be a good candidate for a cyber deception sensor. And really, these sensors are used to not only distract attackers so that when attackers come into the network and they start to sit and collect information, but also to give your teams a chance to identify where those attackers are sitting in the environment so that they can then make changes and lock down the environment and increase the protections that you have in place. When we think about modern ransomware attacks, a lot of attackers aren't just gaining access to a customer's network and then immediately encrypting their data. Attackers will come in and they'll sit and they'll collect information. So you might have a wide range of devices and components within your network, and an attacker isn't going to come in and just immediately do something. They're going to sit and move laterally through the network. The first place they land is probably not going to be that crown jewel that they're looking to attack or to gather information from, but they might be in a place where it's not super valuable information, but it has a path to something that's more valuable. Now, this is really where threat sensors come into play, because we can use these fake sensors to distract as well as identify that someone is doing something that they shouldn't be. Because these sensors have no production value, attackers who are touching them, we know that they shouldn't be there because no one in our organization would be using this asset since it has no production value. So when an attacker engages with one of these sensors, we'll send that data to an external tool. So that could be the dashboard or the cyber deception tool, or it could be an external tool like a CM that you have in place to monitor log events across your whole environment. And this event notification will allow users to identify that threat before something has actually occurred in an effort to get further back in that life cycle of a security event so that we can identify that threat and lock things down before we even need to get to that stage of recovering from a backup. After we've done some of that detection, right? So of course, we're looking for threats in advance of an attack through cyber deception, but we may also be using those helpful insights from our backup environment to detect those threats as well. And once we detect that something has occurred, if there has been an impact to the environment, that's where we want to respond. Now, respond might sound a lot like recover or restore, and sometimes it's a step that gets skipped in the framework, but the important thing here is that response is about limiting the negative impact as well as determining what you're going to do with the information that you gathered in the detection phase. When we look at something like an unusual file activity dashboard where we're looking at those anomaly alerts, we'll get information like what file system, what folder was affected during that analysis that triggered the anomaly alert. This can help you determine, what systems are infected, what systems need to be locked down because they either have been infected or they may be at risk of being infected. This is really where you use these tools to not only just gather information, but determine what you're going to do with that information before you recover your data. The same is true when you're using cyber deception. You'll get these alerts, and depending on the nature of the alert or what activity has been performed, you'll want to then make decisions about how you're going to respond to that event before you go into recovery. Again, having those intelligent alerts are really critical to determine how you're going to respond. And so the ability to integrate with those external tools are really going to help with that response process, whether it's through syslog, webhooks, direct integration with the CM and SOAR platform. Having those audit events, alerts, and logs pushed out there is going to assist in your ability to respond as well as automate processes as part of that response. Then the last phase here is going to be the recover phase. Now, this is what we all think of when we think of backup and recovery, right? Backup and recovery. We're going to pull our data back so that we can start operations after an event has occurred. Now, when you're looking at recovering data, there's a couple things to consider. One, of course, that you're able to recover in the first place. So your backup environment is secured. You have the tools you need to recover the specific data that you need that was maybe impacted by the security event, but also that you have flexibility in terms of where you're going to recover that data. For example, if you're backing up data that's on-prem, and you have a copy locally so that you can do restores between your local copy and your production environment in the event of something like accidental deletion or things like that, needing to revert back to an earlier version. That's really, really useful. And even in the event of a security event like a ransomware attack, you may still be able to leverage your local copy once your on-prem environment has been secured, depending on how broad the attack was and what systems were affected. This is why it's really important to have a solution that is going to give you flexibility in terms of where your backup copies reside, both on-prem and in the cloud, as well as where you can recover that data to. So having a solution that is highly flexible, and even if your whole on-prem environment was no longer available, you can still restore that data elsewhere, is going to give you the full flexibility to respond to that ransomware attack in the way that is the best fit for that particular event. Similarly, you want to have granular recovery options. So when you're looking to recover data, there might be certain components that are top priority. And so when you're looking at backup and recovery tools, you want them to be built in such a way that you can have those flexible destinations. So say you have that offsite cloud copy, you can recover that data to the cloud instead of having to recover it back on-prem. So for your VMware VMs, instead of doing a VMware to VMware restore and having those VMs back on-prem, maybe your on-prem environment is not ready for that recovery yet, and you need to restore those VMs to Azure as Azure VMs. With a tool that has flexible but robust restore options, you'll have the ability to choose the granularity. So in this case here, we can see we can choose guest files, virtual machine files, or the full virtual machine restore, including live recovery and live mount options. We can also choose that flexible destination for that recovery. So we'd be able to restore these VMware VMs out into Azure, and the software itself will go through the process of converting that VM over to the cloud VM, so that we can then start using it in the cloud while our security team is still responding to the on-prem event. Now, that covers what the different components of the NIST framework would be for cybersecurity: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. There's a lot of different facets to this, and again, we really focused on how this applies to your backup environment. But as we know, all of these principles do apply across all components of our environments. So we'd be looking at applying this concept in production for our production systems. And this very tightly relates to how we treat our backup environment. So we have solutions in place with our customers that cover this full framework and really give them peace of mind that they'll be able to recover their data when they need it. If we look at something like Metallic software as a service solution, we're offering a data protection as a service solution where the service itself is hosted in Azure, but we're able to protect a wide range of workloads within our customers' environments. Again, in this digital transformation landscape where we have workloads on-prem, in the cloud, in software as a service applications, as well as customers who have endpoint devices that are out in the field. We want to be able to protect all of those workloads while still providing a really secure solution so that in the event of a ransomware attack, the backup environment is safe and able to be restored. This includes things like Metallic ThreatWise, which would be that cyber deception tool to help you identify those threats earlier in the life cycle through things like those fake assets that can be put within your production environment to help detect those potential attackers before an event has actually occurred. With a solution like Metallic with Commvault, we're able to protect all components of a customer's environment, regardless of where they are in their hybrid cloud journey. This could be their SaaS applications like Office 365, Dynamics 365, could be traditional workloads on-prem like virtual machines, physical databases, physical servers, or even cloud workloads. So infrastructure as a service in services like Azure, AWS, or Oracle. With a software as a service backup solution such as Metallic, you'll really benefit from reduced infrastructure, automatic updates, and simple management, while still getting that enterprise-grade security. If you want to give Metallic a try, you can create a free trial. It's a free 30 days. You can test it out and see all of the different ways that we can protect your data through a SaaS delivery model. Thank you so much for attending, and we hope to speak with you soon.
All right, and thanks, Caitlin, for a great presentation there. And we do have the poll question up. What additional information would you like about the Commvault solution? So this is the standard poll that we always put up. So yeah, data sheet, technical white paper, customer case study, pricing details, personal demo. I'd like to try it myself. Already a customer. You can select as many of those as you'd like. And one more reminder about the handouts. We do have handouts from Commvault, as well as everyone who's presented today. This is pretty much your last chance to grab those handouts, and so please do if any of that stuff interested you. Okay, well, I'm going to leave this poll question up while I announce the final gift card winner of the day. So this is the final $300 Amazon gift card, and the winner is Maria Stone from North Carolina. Maria Stone from North Carolina is the winner of that last gift card. And we do have one more prize to give away, and I've got to admit I'm pretty excited about this one. I wish that I were in the running for it. It is our last grand prize. We have 2 Millennium Falcon sets to give away. These things are epic. They're 7,541 pieces, so it's pretty much what you're going to be doing for the next 6 months or some period of time. It's got 2 sets of crew. It's got the old school Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, and C-3PO to go inside. And then it's got, from the newer movies, it's got older Han Solo, Rey, and Finn. So it's just a really fun prize. So our winners of the Millennium Falcon today are Joseph Carter from Tennessee and Cameron Butler from Wisconsin. So congratulations to Joseph Carter and Cameron Butler. We'll be in touch about the Lego set. I hope you guys enjoy that. All right, well, believe it or not, that brings the Supercharging IT Virtual Summit to a close. If you were watching this event today and thinking this type of event would be the ideal platform to tell people about your platform or solution, well, we'd love to hear from you to help you determine which of our hundreds of events each year would be a good fit for you. So contact us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And with that, on behalf of the ActualTech Media team, I want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together such great presentations and demos and answers to questions. And for making this event possible, I want to thank Rubrik, Zerto, Okta, Tray, and Commvault. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's virtual summit from ActualTech Media and for all of your great questions. That concludes today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we hope to see you next time.